The truth about the matter is that if I had different people in my ear at that time, I would not have made that decision. No, I wouldn't. And that's the truth. I tried my very best at this point in my life to be what didn't happen in that moment. Because I think that I was women were like, I'm an extremely emotional person. People that know me. I'm the kind of person that like, okay, I feel and I can ruminate. I can get so lost in my thoughts. I know a lot of women are like that. Like we're a lot, not all of us, right? But some of us are. Just like men can be like that. Women specifically, there will be moments where they'll be like, I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to be done. I can't stand this. He don't do this. He don't do that. Blah, 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 blah. We're just focusing on these things. And because you don't have a certain person in your say to check you and say, sis, what about this? What about this? What about these strengths? What about what he's not doing? What like those types of things? That can get you thinking about the positive aspects of this person that you may not be thinking about when you're upset. You're only thinking about what you're mad about.
Hey guys, and welcome to Little Black Bird 91. We are talking to you guys about the recent viral video which went on Twitter and was viral with Samantha Lee. She has recently divorced Tyrese, if you didn't know, and her situation with Tyrese has been one that has been spoken about quite a bit of time, because we didn't actually know why the divorce actually happened. We still don't actually know why the divorce happened, because she didn't actually say why it happened. But what's really important is she just mentioned what I think you heard and I heard, which is almost regret for divorcing Tyrese, because she wouldn't have made the same decision had she had different counsel around her. It's funny because we're going to focus on two scriptures before I break this actually down. And the first scripture is Luke 2:52. And then to focus on the scripture in Esther, Esther 1 and Esther 2, but mainly Esther 1 towards the end of the scripture. And I've forgotten what the scripture is. I should have written it down. Where King Xerxes wants to make a decision about Vashti, his queen, and he has to ask the wise men. He said he had 7 of them. He had to ask the wise men first for counsel around what to do. Why is this important? Well, actually, because that's what she's describing. She's describing that the decision she took to divorce Tyrese was one done out of emotionality. Now, we're going to do a full breakdown next week when I'm back in my house and I have full-on Wi-Fi and I can properly break down the video for you where it won't be breaking up and you can actually see it. But she definitely discussed how, for her, emotionality played a huge part in her decision-making, that at the time she was so emotional. Could she make a sensible decision? No. And then she also went on to say about how she was accountable in certain things too, that she could have done better when it came to the relationship. So does this mean that she made a mistake divorcing Tyrese? Well, actually, if you really listen to the video and go all the way through, it's 2 hours long. When I do my breakdown, I'll make it, cut it out for you the parts you need to. She isn't saying necessarily 100% that she would get back with Tyrese. What she said is it's based on stipulation and conditions. If she was to do the work and Tyrese do the work, then she would consider getting back with him. The reality of the situation is, well, then we're still at square one, because we wouldn't get back with him in the first place. And in fact, the reason why we broke up with him is the same reason why we're not going to get back with him, because those things need to be worked on. Now, before anyone jumps down the throne, I know a lot of men out here are going, yeah, Samantha made a mistake. This is what I'm talking about. Women don't know how to stay in relationships long. Pause your brakes and pause your brakes again, okay? Because we saw how Tyrese reacted about how he handles heartbreak and how he handles when women don't do what he wants. And what I mean by that is when they don't stay in the relationship. Remember Zelly, who he's still with right now? What happened when Zelly decided to leave the relationship? Did you see the spitting of fire? Did you see the foul mouth rant and the tirade that he gave? Did you see how he had to apologize in public? There's too much emotionality from Tyrese. And the reality of the situation is 2 of them are emotionally reactive in the relationship. And as a man, you can't be that space. But that's another video for another time. If I don't write that note, so I can do a separate video for you guys on that. Because the problem with Tyrese was he was overly reactive. And when you're emotionally reactive in the same way, you cause the other partner to fear, right? And in reality, the reason why these 2 didn't work out is because of the fact that there are triggers that are happening underneath the surface as well, right? And I can't wait to break this down, because there's so much to break down in the course of this actual video, but I'm gonna try and do it in under 10 minutes and just keep what we need to keep. One of the main things that she spoke about was her triggers. And she spoke about how she's a runner, she's a track star. She gonna run away when it gets hard. She gonna run away, right? And the funny thing is, she spoke about her attachment, about, I think she's anxious, avoidant attachment. And the reality of the situation is, she's going to be triggered by anything that's going to cause anxiety or make her feel like the person's causing separation or causing some level of abandonment, because her father figure issues, right? Which was a great insight for us to understand. Well, the reality of the situation is, until she works on her own triggers and until Tyrese works on his triggers, which I believe that, you know, when there's some issues there when it comes to how women deal with him because of how he grew up. And I think, you know, this is partly the dad not knowing his dad, but also in terms of the mother as well. I don't know if that's an issue there too, but how he speaks. And I remember he mentioned about how his mother has spoken to before in the past, which has been quite, if I'm correct, I may be incorrect, and I wish I would happily correct the statement, has been at points in time vile, which would then make sense that why he took Zelly's comment when she said about Paul Walker, like in his stride, because he knows exactly that kind of energy. And again, Samantha's also quite a sharp, slick mouth. Again, he likes that type of woman who has a sharp, slick mouth, because that's the energy that's familiar to him. That's the energy that promotes love and unity for him. I'm mentioning that because, again, these two are going to have triggers, right? For her specifically, she said accountability is very difficult, and it's difficult because she hadn't come into a knowing of herself. And because there's a wounded girl inside, she could not take accountability for some of the things that she was doing. And I think that's really powerful. I think that's really important. I think that's quintessential, because a lot of relationships, they falter and they fail. Marriages falter and fail because people don't know who they are. People haven't come into a reality and have come into a place where they feel comfortable in their own skin, and they don't compare their behavior to their personhood. These two are so important to understand. Your personhood, am I a good person, versus and your ego and versus your behavior. We can have behaviors that are not necessarily exemplary, but it doesn't mean that you're not a good person, right? But when we have a fragile ego, we mix the behavior with the ego. Now, let me come back onto what it is. Samantha confessed that she regrets divorcing Tyrese, but she only says that in a sense of context. She regrets it in a sense of, at that time, would she have made another choice? They actually asked her, if you were to go back in time, would you have made the same choice? And she actually said, yes, she would have made a different choice. Someone might say, whoa, well, then that's it then. Case closed. She would happily go back with Tyrese. No. What she said was, going back in that time, she would have given it more time to figure out how best to work around these issues. The reality of the situation is there were other information in there that was very pertinent and important, because before you jump to the fact that she said that obviously the counselors around her and those who were given her good counsel necessarily were rooted against her. What she also failed to really deduce and calculate is that you gave them information that made them not likable. Number one. But number two, also they saw from the very beginning of the relationship there were some issues. For instance, y'all abandoned your counseling in the very beginning. Your premarital counseling, you actually skipped it. So of course, there are going to be issues there. Of course, the person's going to be like, wait, hold on. Since y'all skipped that, are you not serious? Since y'all skipped the premarital counseling, how serious can you be? And then within a matter of months, you know, he's asking you to marry him, which I don't think he was love bombing. I just think to myself, Tyrese again, and I want to deep dive this a little bit better. Tyrese was also a person too where he needs to dive deep first into love, because he's so infatuated with being loved back. He's so in need of being loved back. So he almost throws himself early, boundaryless, and without actually vetting the person. I asked this question at the very beginning. I said, how did he not know that Samantha was this way? And the reality was, no, he did. He ignored it, and she had conformed. She actually backed up my sentiment where she said, actually, she herself, you know, Tyrese knew who she was. Yeah, Tyrese knew who she was, right? He knew who she was, and because they asked her, you know, what flags should a man look out for? And when she talked about the flags that a man should look out for, she described basically saying herself and said, hey, look, he would have known. Why would he have known? Because he would have ignored the reality sitting right in front of him. What's that reality? Well, the reality is that this woman had her own personal issues, and she was a flight risk from early. This is not new. He chose someone who he intentionally ignored their flight risk issues. And then turn around and be like, what happened? I don't know what happened. Well, she's a flight risk. And the moment that she felt like she was no longer safe, she ducked out and took the first flight out of that relationship. Not because of your money, but because of the fact that she's triggered very easily. And she had to do some self-work. Now, someone might say, well, she's a therapist. Yeah, and a therapist needs to do the work. A therapist is not free. They are not exempt from the work that needs to be done. And so in this situation, before you jump to excitement, before you say that, yeah, we got her, we nailed her, you know, women don't know how to stay in relationships. 70% of women actually, initiate divorce. Before we get to that point, let's be real. She wouldn't even get back with him unless there were certain changes he made, which means there was a right choice at the time to make when you were leaving. What you feel like, you feel guilty because at the time you left it, you were in high esteem of emotions. That's different. Right? And I get her guilt there in that sense, because she made that decision in that immediate moment based on a high intensity of emotions. And we call that, you know, the refractory period, where how long does it take you to come down from your emotional high, right? For instance, if your emotions are stoked, just say you're angry, how long does it take you to come down from your anger? Is it a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, a few weeks? And of course, depending on the actual situation too, but how long does it take you to have that refractory period? And that plays a huge part, because what she's actually describing is refractory period, where you get to reset yourself, reset the nervous system and say, actually, now I'm looking back at it 6 months later, I could have forgiven. I could have let it go, right? That's the refractory period, but it's very hard. And this is why I say stop making things spiritual when they're also practical. We have to apply the word, yes, but we need to apply it with practicality and wisdom in mind. Well, I'm going to leave it there. I don't want to go too long. Like I said, I want to keep it nice and short. But if you haven't watched the video, I would say it's worth a watch. And they've broken it up into chapters, so you can watch it very easily. But the reality of the situation is, as a conclusion of what I just saw, what I saw with Samantha was somebody, number one, who took accountability, but two, played a huge part in the divorce because she's a runner and a track star. And she has an attachment issue, which is easily triggered. And therefore, they probably triggered each other back and forth without even really understanding what they were actually doing. And also because of her high emotionality, and due to the fact that she wanted this fairy tale, sweep me off my feet, and he really personally as well chose somebody who he would ignore their red flags because he wants to be loved so much and he lacks projects. Therefore, he himself has ignored that. And now we're in this position. But I'm glad she took some accountability finally. Like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button, full notification of uploads. We're trying to get to 100K. Please do subscribe to the channel. Much love.